Mr. Tyler Gray, thank you for agreeing to come on the War Podcast today.
Yeah.
You are former Delta, former Army Ranger. You starred and directed in SEAL Team, and your director debut was season 3 of SEAL Team, episode 10, which
Yep.
I watched. Big fan of. I think that was a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you
Yeah,
before we kind of dive into your new book. Um,
absolutely.
so you are on kind of like the Hollywood side of things, and I just want to know, from your opinion, when people shake your hand and you tell them what unit you were in, do they have like any idea that the Rangers, the SEALs, the units that don't exist, like their dream is to be a part of Delta Force for some of them? Do you think that that kind of translates to someone who's not in, that they fully understand whose hand that they're shaking in that moment?
Well, I would say no, and the reason I say no is because I generally never tell people, where I was. Everyone generally know. I mean, if it's in Hollywood and it's about a military thing, then they're going to know that I have a military background. But I never, for the longest time, would mention specific units.
Mhm.
The reason that I'm specifically mentioning, the unit you referenced to in the book and on the cover of the book is because I've wanted to put that out there so people the story is about doubt and about failure and about struggle. It's not about being cool, it's not about being a badass, it's not about it's
Mhm.
literally about weakness and about just all the pain that I mostly to a degree put myself through. And so I wanted to put the cool guy unit name out there so that people saw the contrast between what their expectation is versus
Mm.
their reality. Because in my opinion, the reality is that we're all way more similar than we think we are. But currently, and I'm just going to say this, I'm not going to name any names, but I'm not going to need to. Right now, there's this mentality that's been struck, which is this code of the silent professional.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the problem with that code is that we were never supposed to be silent. That was not the phrase. The phrase is quiet. We're supposed to be quiet professionals, not
Mhm.
silent ones. The other problem with the quiet professional or silent professional for that matter mentality is you have some that are definitely not silent and definitely not quiet. They're loud. I don't know if I would use the term professional, but they're loud. And those are the voices that everyone is hearing right now. And the problem is by listening to
Mm.
those voices, people are getting an unrealistic expectation of resilience or unfeeling or stoicism that's not necessarily accurate. Anyone can portray anything they want on social media. And so
Mhm.
for me, I wanted to put, the cool guy unit affiliation out there and then take off my mask and go, dude, this is who I really am. This is what you think those people are. You think that unit is a bunch of machines who are unfeeling and robotic and never have to worry about this or that. But it's not true. And it's not true. I do have to deal with those things. I do have to work through emotions. I do have to I was picked on as a kid. All these things, that's reality. And once we stop focusing our differences and start taking off our masks and understanding our similarities, we'll see that we're all a lot more alike than we think we are. And then once we realize that, then we can start processing everything together and start healing together as a community, because we're actually, as I said, a lot more similar than we think.
No, I agree, and I think that's actually a really important thing because there is a spectrum when people, like you said, get out of certain units or get out of the military. It's kind of whoever's speaking out about something is kind of the image that's going to be portrayed, and you're kind of hitting it from this more vulnerable, more like realistic standpoint where everybody kind of has these perceptions and this is what people think, but it goes quite a bit deeper. And then you have, and you're talking about that and you're kind of giving that insight from what I understand in your new book, which will be coming out on the 15th. So here in a couple days,
Yep.
Forged in Chaos. It's an interesting thing, if I'm being honest, because everybody has their own experience when they transition out of the military, no matter which part that you're in, but I've always wondered the units that are in, the the dream units, the fancy units, the ones that people, dream about getting into one day, like, "Oh, that's my goal in life. I wanna be a SEAL, I wanna be a ranger, I wanna be, part of, Delta Force," whatever that is. Um, when you get out, it's the same as if someone was admin. You're in this brotherhood, you're in this sisterhood, and then it's gone, and you were kind of something, and then you're thrown into this nothing, and some people end up lost and wandering, and I was kind of surprised when I was listening to your previous podcast because I thought in my mind, especially medical, oh, like surely when they get out, they have a psychologist or psychiatrist that is from that unit that they can keep talking to up a year afterwards, that can check in and make sure everything's okay. Like surely that's what we're doing for these people that like save the world, that are the best in the world. But I was surprised that it doesn't seem like there is, and that means that there's a lot of guys, a lot of, ladies and gentlemen that are in those places that don't have, I wanna say, like, anything to relate to, kind of, because it is so hush hush.
I mean, you just hit on something that I think is actually really interesting that I probably haven't talked that much about. But yeah, the relate to is actually a really good point. So I would say, in my opinion, everyone when they get out. So first of all, for myself, for many years, I said, "Oh man, I lost my yeah." Let me say this: after I got out, I didn't know what was what, and then a couple years went by, and then I would look back and go, "Man, I lost my identity when I got out." And now I realize that I didn't lose my identity, and I don't think we lose our identity when we get out. What I
Mhm.
think now is that we never really had one to begin with,
What do
and
you
the
can you
reason
explain that? Like
yeah, the reason I'm saying that is if you join the military and that job or that affiliation became your identity, then there's no possible way that you had a truly strong enough self identity before that job. Because if you did, the job wouldn't have became your sole identity. So
mm,
I don't think it's about us losing it. I think it's just for me, the discovery that I never really had one was critical. And I'm going to throw purpose into that same exact thing. When you
mhm,
get out of the military, you're like, "Oh my god, I lost my purpose." No, you didn't. You never had a purpose to begin with. The military became your purpose, and they gave you their purpose, and then when you got out, they took it away. And then you're struggling, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you should be doing, what you're meant to do, what your purpose is, and that is very, very difficult for everyone, myself included. On top of that, as you just said, for me, I came from a unit that is shockingly small. I won't say details, but shockingly tiny. And so there was a lot of things where I just struggled to, it's to your point, even if I told people, let's say I go to Hollywood, even if I told them every single detail about, my experience in the military, my story, all that stuff, even if I told them, they still wouldn't know. And
mm.
so and again, I don't have the time to tell them, but even if I did, they wouldn't know. And so what I learned is there's this also level of isolation where
Mm,
you just feel misunderstood for me or not understood, maybe not miss, but not understood. And it took me a lot of time to realize that you also lost the group of people that understood because they were there with you. And so when you get out of the military, you're not experiencing one loss, you're experiencing like six. You're
mhm,
experiencing a loss of career, a loss of friends, just moving, across country from where you serve to where home of record. That's a loss to a degree, right? You've lost the community, you've lost your identity, you've lost your purpose. All these losses are happening at one time, at the same time. And the problem that is currently happening is all those losses are happening, and yet we're told the problem is four letters: PTSD.
mhm.
Completely, by the way, all those losses that I just explained have nothing. nothing to do with PTSD, absolutely nothing.
You're
So
right.
the point that I'm making is the reason I believe that there's so much the suicide epidemic is what it is, and not just suicide, but the epidemic of veteran mental health issues, for lack of a better term, I believe is based on the fact that we're being told it's four letters, which is
Mhm.
one problem, by the way.
Mhm.
It's four letters, but it's one problem. And yet, demonstratively, it's a lot more complicated. And it's 10 problems that are all happening at the same time, not one problem, which, by the way, is not even remotely specific to veterans. PTSD is a broad term. Anyone can have it for almost anything. So if
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
then it can't be our specific problem.
Right, and it's interesting because I was a medic in the military, and, when you've talked about in the past, like, a light bulb went off when you were did the research and you were able to connect that it was a nervous system response, it was a firing of,
Yeah.
synapses and all these things. What about that really kind of, like, opened your brain and kind of, like, gave you that eureka, like, moment? Because a lot of people understand PTSD, but I think you're right, it doesn't hit, and it does relate to different things.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll say it this way: I kept talking to mental health professionals,
Mhm,
and PTSD is considered, and I'm not saying scientifically, but at least if you asked 100 veterans, I'd say 99.9 are going to say, "Oh yeah, PTSD is a mental health issue." And so I kept talking to all these professionals, and it was, recommending talk therapy. And I'm not, saying talk therapy can't help, but everyone is
mm,
constantly telling me all these things about mental health, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And I kept saying the same thing, which was, look, I get what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, I can feel something
mhm,
in my body is different. What you're telling me it should be, I'm telling you it isn't.
mhm,
My brain doesn't feel the way you're telling me I should feel. It doesn't react the way you're telling me it should react. So I kept saying I have a fundamentally physical I have a physical issue going on, not just a mental one. And
mhm.
when I read about polyvagal theory and the autonomic nervous system, and once I really started understanding it, I was like, and it's not an opinion. Like, this is science. This
Mhm,
is a proven fact. PTSD is a nervous system dysregulation scientifically. So why are we just talking about it in a mental sense and not in a physical sense? Once I understood the physical things that were happening within me, then everything that I was doing suddenly, instead of just, oh, the guy's got PTSD, he's crazy, suddenly
mhm,
I understood the why, and I understood the cause and the effect. And then I understood, on top of everything, that what I was doing was just a absolutely completely normal reaction to a
mm,
given set of conditions. And it was my body reacting because of the way it's wired, for lack of a better term, rather
mhm.
than me making certain choices, because of mental trauma or certain other issues. So the nervous system component is, I think, one of the biggest things that needs to be put out, because it has such an ability to help the men and women who understand why they're doing what they're doing.
No, I think that's very well said, and it kind of is, jogging my memory when you were kind of going into, talking about the nervous system, talking about like a wiring and programming. And in your book, you also hit on the fact that it's not just something that happens in the military, but it can start, and your programming can start in childhood, and then that can follow you through. And then as an adult, if your childhood was chaotic or was unhealthy, you know, it's gonna that's your sense of home. That is what should bring you peace. And when you're an adult, you will find what feels like home. And unfortunately, for those people who have not had the healthiest life, to home is going to be unhealthy decisions, things that increase their adrenaline, things that increase, certain cortisol levels.
Yep.
And it's very sad because those people, in order to be healthy, have to accept the fact that the best thing, the healthiest thing is to never feel at home. And that's a very sad thing for people to understand. And the fact that you hit on that in your book and you follow that and you're like, this is why you are the way, and you are actually like predisposed, or I don't want to say predisposed, but you were
I use
programmed so perfectly.
yeah, I use the term reverse wired.
Reverse wired. Yes. Perfect. Yeah. And that's, I feel like that's gonna hit home for a lot of people, and it's also gonna make people feel a little uncomfortable to think that it's something that was in their childhood that they had no control over, that affects them in their adult life. Some people are gonna be very resistant and stubborn to that, despite
I
it being true.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Look, I'm glad you said that because you're 100% right. It is. I'm going to get a lot of pushback on it, but it doesn't change the truth of it. And the
Mhm,
faster the community starts accepting, like so, I'll explain the concept of you know basically I kept being told again PTSD, 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 and there's multiple problems with it, but I'll just give one very simple one, and that is PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder. Look at the
mhm,
first word, post.
mhm.
Post traumatic stress disorder assumes a pre traumatic stress baseline, right? It
Mm,
can't
mhm.
be post traumatic stress unless there was a pre traumatic stress baseline. Also,
Right.
keep in mind another massive problem with PTSD is it is event based. It cannot be diagnosed unless it is diagnosed on a single event.
Mhm.
Now, the problem with that is, as a veteran who went to war, they're going to try and talk to you about what they think is your most traumatic event, which for me was getting blown up. But I kept telling them I don't care about that. It doesn't bother me, and I wasn't lying. And so what I now know is that PTSD as a diagnosis doesn't take into account environment. It only is based off events. So
What environment are you talking about? Like, during.
no, it's what I'm saying is it's event based, so it's one event. It doesn't
Ah,
really work for an environment, right? A
right.
long-term exposure. It's based
Mhm,
on short-term exposure, event-based short-term exposure. It's
mhm.
not really designed as a diagnosis for long-term exposure. So I basically just kept it didn't fit me. I kept saying it doesn't feel right. And there's an event that happened, which I detail in the book. And after that event, I was like, dude, what the hell was that? That was weird behavior. And I had to explain it. Why did I do what I did? And I sat there for like 3 hours and I came up with this. And I call it LTSD. I don't have post traumatic stress disorder. I have lack of traumatic stress disorder. I as a I like when the environment is chaotic. I'm calm. That's my jam. But when the environment is calm, the chaos is in my mind. So, how do I calm myself? Simple. I create chaos in the environment,
Mhm,
and then my mind goes back to calm. For years, I mean, I came up with that in like 2010 ish. I
mhm.
talk to veterans, and everyone goes, "Yes, that makes sense. I do that." Right. And I mean, it's common. And so the problem is for a long time I was like, oh, it must have started in training. Somewhere in the military it started, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of associated with training, not necessarily combat. And then it wasn't until I had another experience detailed in the book where I was with a bunch of veterans, and every single one of us had, again, relatively, variations, but relatively the same childhood stories. Like almost everyone had
Mm.
the essential same childhood with varying degrees of things, but it was the same story. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my God, it didn't start in training. It started in childhood. And the Forged in Chaos name of the book came from we were forged in chaos. Our childhood was traumatic stress. It was a traumatic stress filled environment. It was chaos.
Mhm.
We look back so many, and I mark my words, veterans watching this are all going to say the same thing. Oh, my childhood wasn't traumatic. You're wrong. And the reason you're wrong, more than likely, is because you're looking at your childhood as an adult and going, Oh, it wasn't that bad. My parents this, my parents that. Like I didn't have a traumatic childhood.
Mm,
And so I don't use the word trauma or traumatic. I use
mhm.
the word chaotic. And the reason I'm using the word chaotic is because chaos is traumatic to a child.
It is,
It
yes.
doesn't matter what you as an adult think of your childhood. It matters what you as a child thought of it. And
Mhm,
chaos is trauma. It is traumatic. So what happens is you grow up in this constant environment, not event, but an environment of chaos.
mhm,
Well, the brain, especially at that time, is very malleable and it reverse wires itself
mhm,
calm in chaos. Why? Because it has to, because that's the environment. It's doing that in order to survive. And it works until it doesn't, because chaos becomes your homeostasis. Chaos becomes your baseline. So,
mhm.
what does that lead to? And I'm going to go on a limb here and say a lot of veterans think, oh, I joined the military because this or this. My opinion now, I think the vast majority of us join because of our childhoods, because it leaves us seeking chaos. And so we go into vocations where that is rewarded, valued, revered, all those different things. And it's not just, the military, first responders. There's several, vocations that all, require that common chaos baseline. And so LTSD for me, once you get to an adult, though, again, it works and helps you survive childhood. But as an adult, and sorry, let me be also clear. Don't get me wrong. It is a necessary prerequisite for the military and first responders. It helps you do that job and it helps you do it. It's a superpower in the job, let's be honest. And yet, when you get out, now that superpower has no value and you can't use it. And so you feel worthless and you feel like purposeless and again, lack of an identity because you know what you're capable of, but you no longer have an outlet for your superpower.
The way you put that is going it's gonna speak to a lot of people hearing this, and it's gonna set off a lot of light bulbs, and it's gonna have a lot of intrigue and a lot of curiosity, and I think it's very, unique to find somebody who was in the military, you know, whether they, did something that was in your line of work or not, that is speaking on something that isn't just all military encompassing, all veteran encompassing, although it is. But I feel like there's a lot of gentlemen, there's a lot of men out there that are going to hear what you've had to say and the stories that you've shared from what I understand in your book that are going to resonate with people because you don't necessarily have to join the military when you've had a chaotic environment. However, those same things and maybe that lack of self-awareness that the military teaches you, you won't really be able to get access to the education that might allow you to be so self-aware. But your book is like applicable to kind of anybody,
I,
which is very
I 100%. And I'll be honest, like when I started writing it and it was, kind of veteran focused because obviously
Mhm,
that's my background. And then as we kept going, then it was like, oh wait, this works for all first responders because it's the
mhm,
same pattern. And then we kept going and we're like, oh my God, this is the same pattern for CEOs, for, all these different jobs. And like, to your point, there's I talk a lot about what's a warrior. The tagline of the book is a warrior's origin story.
mhm,
What is a warrior? And what I define it as in the book is it's not, a job. It's not whether you wear a uniform or not. For me, what makes a warrior is someone who, when pushed, will push back.
mhm,
And for me, I feel like when you're born, we so commonly now talk about, oh, that person was born to be a singer, that person was born to be this, born to do that, right? No one talks now about, oh, that person was born to be a warrior. But when they did
mm.
talk about it, every other era in human history except for now was,
Really?
oh, think about it. When 200 years ago, like if you go to an Amazon tribe that's literally still in the Amazon, and they're still warriors are revered in those societies. And the problem I
Oh.
think we have in society today is warriors are seen as not needed. And so, a kid that's hyperactive in school and just can't sit still, he's considered a bad kid rather
Mhm.
than, hey, maybe this, like, we need to stop judging a freaking bird by its ability to freaking, run up a tree. You know what I mean? Or stop judging a squirrel by its inability to fly. Well, that was a bad analogy because they're flying squirrels, but you get
Yeah,
my point. Right?
yeah, those don't count,
It's
those
still
don't
flying
count.
squirrels. You get my point. And so, um, for me, this warrior, this innate warriorness, for lack of a better term, and I want to bring up another point of the whole thing because it's very important. I think you'll find it interesting. But you have this chaotic environment, right? And then you have two types of people that pretty much exist. You have a warrior, and then I don't really have a name for it. I'll just call them a victim mentality, right? So a
Mm,
warrior, when pushed by that chaotic environment, will push back. The victim mentality, when pushed by that environment, they stay down, right? And they never get back up. And so, in my experience with what happened to me, like, I'll give you a great example. You hear very commonly the term about the war within, right? The
mhm.
the the internal mental struggle with veterans. What is it? Like, we talk about it all the time, but what is it? How would you explain it? And so in the book, my experience in Hollywood, I was like, you know what? I need to explain this because it's critical to understand. And I'm just going to do what I would do if I was writing a movie, and I'm going to explain it as two characters. And so what we came up with in the book is you have this chaotic environment, and it's not good. And a child knows intrinsically that that environment is not good.
Mhm,
Children are egocentric. They're egocentric, and they feel that they are responsible for the world, right?
mhm.
At that stage. And so a child is in a chaotic environment, knows it's bad, and then goes, well, the environment's bad, so I must be bad. And that's why the environment is bad.
It's a
So what
self-blame
happens?
cycle.
Yeah, well, it's common with children. So they internalize many things. I'm the cause of my parents getting divorced, right? That's a common.
Mm,
So they internalize things that are quite frankly external and have nothing to do with them, but that's just not the way they see the world at that time. And so what then happens is this child goes, okay, I am intrinsically bad. And therefore I need to hide that. I need to hide that badness in order to get the love and affection and attention I need. And so we create, I created, and I think a lot of us create what I call the destroyer. So there's the innate you, which is the warrior. That's the real you. And the warrior is fundamentally good, wants to help others, serve, do the right thing. But then that's not working to survive. So you have to create a protective mask, and I call that the destroyer. The destroyer is not the real you. The destroyer is the you that trauma forced you to create to survive. And the destroyer, not that great. He's actually kind of not good at all. I wouldn't say evil, but he's not good. That's who manipulates, who lies, who compartmentalizes, does all the things in order to. The warrior feels, has emotions and feelings. The destroyer doesn't care about anything, has no emotions and no feelings. Why? Because then you can't get hurt, which has already happened. And that's why you created them. So what happens is that destroyer, we put the destroyer in the charge and we wear that mask and we live that just like I did for years. I lived as the destroyer. Why? Because being myself, my true authentic self, was painful. And it worked until I got blown up, and years later. But when I got blown up, that mask was forever broken because I couldn't
mm,
go back to that other person, because all the things that made that person, I was no longer. And so the problem with the what is the war within? The war within, later in life, is between the warrior and the destroyer. One is good, one is bad. And the problem is we don't know which one is the real us. And that creates a
mm.
massive amount of internal conflict. And both are constantly struggling for control. It's like you have two versions of yourself in your mind, but you don't know which one is really you. And once we realize that you were never the destroyer and that was just created to get you through a traumatic and difficult and chaotic situation, you can find authenticity in the fact that you're actually the warrior and always have been. And it's not about killing the destroyer, it's about integrating everything into one, and understanding you have the capability to do that. But it was never the real you. And the real you is a good person who deserves love and has value.
Hmm. In your book, so stop me because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
That place where you're in between and you're trying to, realize that this unhealthy version or this version that was developed in order to create a shield, um, there's still going to be that feeling of I have to be accountable for the decisions I've made. Therefore, I have to be that person. I have to somewhat be in this identity because I'm capable of it. If I'm capable of it and I enacted and a part of that, I feel like it's going to be very hard for somebody when even if they've just dissected into two pieces and they're like, okay, this is this and this is this, to not feel lost and to make peace. That's not going to be easy.
It's not. And to your point, I think that level of self awareness is good to a degree, but also bad to a degree. And what I mean by that
Mhm.
is like the more you're aware, it's like you said, the actions of the destroyer are still you. You still did them. So you are responsible. You can't say that I wasn't responsible for those things because you are and you were. But at the same time, you also have to go, you know what? I was responsible, but that was a response to certain environmental conditions. Like you have to accept that though you're responsible, actually, let me say it in a better way. The fundamental thing that people need to accept is that just because you did bad things doesn't make you a fundamentally bad person.
Mhm.
All good people do bad things. And quite frankly, I think a lot of bad people at times do good things, right? Actions don't necessarily dictate who we are. There's a great movie. I won't go into depth on it, but the whole movie is about people trying to define who this guy was. And some people say he was the worst thing ever. Some say he was the best thing ever. And the whole point of the movie is over someone's entire life, you're going to be all those things. And it's hard
Mm.
to take an action and define who they were, right? Um, and on that note, it's worth saying, I don't care how bad the person is. I've talked to some very bad people in interrogations and things like that, and they think they're doing the good thing. So it's very, most bad people doing bad things are doing so for reasons that they think are right and good, right? So, and I'm not saying I agree with them, but I'm just saying it all ultimately comes down to our perception. And you have to, the way I look at it with the warrior and the destroyer, or even with the childhood issues, is I simply say this: it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Mhm.
Right? All those things that happen, anything negative that's ever happened in my life. I mean, many of them are my fault, but the things that like actually weren't my fault. Let's say I was
Yeah,
a victim of something. I
right.
look at that and go, I was a victim of it. But you cannot stay a victim, because if you stay a victim, if you put the onus of responsibility on the person or entity or circumstances that created it, it'll always stay with you. The only way to move on from it is to go, you know what? It wasn't my fault, but it is my responsibility now to let go of that, to forgive for that, and then move on. Because if not, you'll be forever trapped in it.
That's a very scary trap to be in. That's a very scary thing to do.
Yeah.
I wanna ask you 2 questions.
Yeah.
Um, for your book, what is your dream outcome? What is your goal? And then for you yourself, because 'cause you've gone through quite a bit of journey and not just kept it to yourself, but you're putting it on paper and you're sharing it with a whole lot of people, and that's a very, hard thing to do. That's a very difficult thing to do, and then to wanna do that in a place where it's gonna help people is, even more of a polished thing. So what is your goal with your book? What dream come true, if you could speak into
Yeah.
existence and it happens, what's that look like?
Dream come true would be, I mean, first of all, it's a great question because I haven't actually thought of it, but probably the biggest dream come true on it is I hope that the book gets out there and that it allows people to start seeing our similarities as veterans and first responders and as people in this pattern or this mold, this forged in chaos mold. We all are so similar. And if we start focusing on our similarities and not our differences, we can help each other. And I hope that the book will lead to us as a community binding together and coming up with our own solutions and our own responses and our own solutions, because the only way, in my opinion, that this community is going to heal itself or get healed is by healing itself. It's on
Mm.
us because we are the ones who have the experience. We are the ones that are going through it. And no one is coming to save us. And the proof of that is nothing has worked. You know, awareness and treatment options for PTSD are at an all-time high, yet the rate of suicide is going up. So I hope this book can lead to a conversation about some potential new solutions, and hopefully start to change the narrative on what the actual problem is, rather than just assigning it to one word, four letters, and
Diagnosis.
four-letter diagnosis, exactly. So hopefully it leads to a conversation about, uh, actually, I'll say it this way. I think right now we're focused, the entire treatment system is focused on treating symptoms and never addressing, let alone curing,
Mm.
actual disease. PTSD, just think of it this way: PTSD, no matter what, is still just a symptom.
Mhm.
The trauma that caused it is still the disease. And if we focus on treating the symptom and not healing the disease, then it's never going to go away.
If you could, like, wave a magic wand with all the information you've had, and you could say, "Okay, military, at least for, and it's gonna be easier for you to relate to guys and for guys to gentlemen to relate to you for, the similar categories you guys were in." If you could just wave a wand and say, "Hey, just do this for people who are getting out, for people who, have done all these things and not talked about it because 'cause you're not supposed to, but you're told you're supposed to, but you can't, and then you have to worry about clearances and, all this stuff, and then they go out into the world and then they have, they might think they have PTSD because it was diagnosed, but really it's something deeper." If the military could just wave a wand and be like, "Now we will start doing this," do you think would make the biggest impact? Because technically you're waving a wand just by saying it.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest thing that I think is destroying us is, we need to take off our masks, and we need to
Mm.
accept that, uh, that and a lot of people use the term vulnerability, like, oh, the book is so vulnerable. I don't think it's vulnerable. I didn't intend to be vulnerable. What I did intend to do was be authentic.
Mm.
And you can't be authentic if you're wearing a mask. And so I feel like, this community, especially the special operations community, needs to take off its masks and start being authentic. And it's not about strength is not, or not feeling emotions isn't strength. That's a weakness. And we need to start taking away this mentality of what the vet bro culture, I think, is destroying the larger veteran culture. And I think we need to start talking more about our struggles and our weaknesses, and all the things that people want to project this strength while behind the mask, struggling. And I think the more we put out our struggle and each other recognize it, it'll have more people be willing to put out their struggle. And then once you admit struggle, you can start working on changing it. While you're just wearing a mask and saying everything's great and I'm fine, 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 that is why the suicide rate continues to go up, because no one is willing to be authentic and say how they really feel and how they're really doing.
That was very, very eloquently said. And this sounds cheesy, but I don't know, maybe it's because 'cause I'm in arts and crafts, this is super lame, but having a physical, even if you're group of people were to give you a physical mask and, say thank you for all that you did and blah 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 and all the names are on and they go, "Okay, this is yours, this is who you were, but you need to hang this on a shelf and you need to have it there so you know it's always there, but you know, you can admire it, you can respect it, you can acknowledge it, but you can't put it back on." Um I I'm a physical type of tangible kind of person when it comes to like, helping others and things like that. And that's just an idea. That's just an idea that,
No, 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 I
just
mean, I think that
spitballing.
was no,
It's
that was,
cheesy.
I mean, I think it was a very good, idea. It's obviously in your thing, it's symbolic, but I think those things, work for a reason. And yeah, I mean, to your point, what I really like about what you said is the destroyer, that mask. Yes, it helped you. It helped me. My destroyer helped me as a child. It helped me get through a lot of things, the bullying and the rejection from friends, girls. I mean, it hurt a lot as a kid, and so then I just stopped feeling, put on that mask, and didn't care anymore. But the irony too, by the way, about that mask is you say you don't care, but you do, right?
There's a little
It's like,
twinge. Yeah.
yeah, it's exactly. You say you don't, but it stacks up over time and it's always there. And so I think what you said is important about thinking the mask for what it did for you, but realizing that it's no longer serving you. It served you for a certain amount of time, but now, one of the things that I talk about in the book is how, what happens when the things that made you a superhero in the eyes of the world make you a super villain in your own life. And I believe that the
Oof.
destroyer is the supervillain. And though he was created to help you with your tragic origin story, it's no longer serving you. And I'm a huge comic book fan, so that's where it comes from.
Love comic
But
books. Comic books
yeah,
are
there you go.
great.
So that's it's no longer serving you, and you got to take that mask off, and as you said, thank it, but you got to leave it on the wall, and it's no longer going to serve you to put it on. And it's all about the more of us that take off the mask and are authentic, I think this community will start changing in a very dramatic way.
I'm so excited to read this book. I'm so excited to recommend it to the docs that I know that are still in and be like, "Hey, here you go," because they're all a bunch of book nerds.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I hope you get something from it, and yeah, let me know your thoughts when you check it out. But
I'm stoked. Where can people find it?
right now, it's on Amazon for pre-order. Forged in Chaos, Tyler Gray, Gray with an E, comes out. It'll ship on Tuesday, and I'm really excited to. The book. Actually, I want to say this real quick, 'cause I think it's kind of important. So the book's a little odd in the sense that three-fourths of the book is my story. It's an autobiography, and then one-fourth is really an AAR on my life, as well as solutions. And I didn't want to put out a story that didn't have some kind of like solution. I didn't want to put out a problem without putting out some
Mhm.
kind of solution. And um, I think people will be, again, it's not a book about being a badass or a hero. It's a book about being a very soft, sensitive kid who got picked on and bullied and beat up, and who then tried to freaking uh, who was constantly trying to push back, with the innate warrior, and just did so in a lot of ways that were self-destructive. And really, it's a book about struggle and self-destruction.
I'm very excited. I think that's going to relate to a lot of people. And to be honest, coming from medical, I can tell you just real quick before we sign off that sometimes the best way to teach somebody something is to have them view it through somebody else's shoes and then make that relation. And it can
Yes.
hit different because you make your own interpretations and you can relate and you can struggle. So I think that being three-fourths of the book is brilliant.
Yeah,
So,
that's why, with my background in Hollywood, when you watch a movie, your favorite movie isn't because you see the main character. Your favorite movie is because you see a version of yourself, right? That's
ooh,
why it's your favorite movie. And so
yeah.
I hope with this book isn't that we my hope is that people read it and don't see me, but see a version of themselves. And hopefully through the mistakes I made, they can hopefully avoid the pitfalls that I fell into, and basically, hopefully, it's the book can be a light in the dark, for those that are in the dark right now, like I was for so many years.
I'm so excited. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited. This is absolutely huge, and it's great when you have people that wanna make an impact, wanna make a difference, and they do it, and they do all the hard things to do it. I don't wanna keep you for much more of your time. I know you're releasing your book. You have everybody who wants to talk to you and know what's going on, and it's a huge thing, so I'm very excited for you. Where
No,
can
thank
people
you. Oh, yeah, go ahead,
Yes,
sorry.
sir. I was gonna
Oh,
say,
no,
where
it's
can
just
people
thank you
find
for
you?
Yeah, me, Tyler A. Gray, Gray with an E.com is my website, and then Tyler A. Gray, Gray with an E on Instagram, or other LinkedIn, whatever. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a great, a lot of great questions that I've done a lot of interviews, and there was a lot of great questions that some I'm still going to have to think about because I hadn't thought about. So thank you so much for having me, and I hope you enjoyed the book.
Yes, sir. I can't wait to read it.